Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a feeling. A feeling I think everyone listening has had at some point. You're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out over the ocean. Or maybe you're holding your kid for the very first time. Or you're just listening to a piece of music that just hits you right in the chest.
Yeah.
And you get this wave.
Yeah.
It's awe.
Yeah.
It's wordless. It's huge. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely. It's that spark where the self sort of dissolves for a second.
Exactly, the spark.
Yeah.
But here's the problem, and this is what we're wrestling with today. Fast forward 1,000 years, and that raw, beautiful spark has turned into a building.
Right.
A building with thick stone walls, a rigid hierarchy, and a strict list of rules about what you can and cannot eat on Tuesdays.
And often a reason to go to war with the people across the river who eat different things on Tuesdays.
Right. So the question is, how do we get from that raw feeling to here, the rigid rule? We have a fascinating source today that breaks down the mechanics of, well, religious evolution.
It's a look under the hood.
And I want to be clear right off the bat. We're putting our personal beliefs on the shelf for this. This isn't about whether God exists. It's about how human consciousness processes the idea of God.
The source text basically argues that there is a predictable, almost mechanical slide from myth to physics. It's a story about how we constantly mistake the map for the territory.
That phrase, the map is not the territory, that's the anchor here. But let's start with the structure. When we look at a major religious institution, and our text uses Christianity as its model. But this applies to almost any organized system.
Political ones, too.
For sure. They aren't just offering good advice. They're making very specific types of claims.
They have to. And the source argues that for an institution to survive, it has to make these three specific claims of certainty. These are the load-bearing walls.
Okay, lay them out for us. But I also want to know why they need them. Because, frankly, they can sound pretty aggressive.
They do, but there's a logic to it. The first claim is exclusive truth. This is the idea that the religion isn't a metaphor, and it isn't one option among many. It is the final truth.
So, I am the door, the only door.
Precisely. It's binary. You are inside the truth, or you are outside of it.
But why the rigidity? Why does the institution need to say, we are the only way? It just feels arrogant. Like, can't we just say, we have a pretty good idea?
Well, if you say we have a pretty good idea, you don't build a civilization. That's the argument. It isn't just arrogance, it's architectural necessity.
Architectural necessity.
Yeah. If you are trying to build a society, you can't build it on maybe. You can't build a legal system or a moral code on, I feel like this might be true, but Jeff over there disagrees. You need bedrock.
So exclusive truth isn't just a claim, it's the glue.
It's the glue that holds the community together against chaos. It's about survival. You need a unified story to keep the tribe from killing each other.
Yeah.
And that leads directly to the second claim, which is what secures the first one. Authority from revelation.
Which means you can't argue with the author.
Right. If I read a philosophy book, you can debate me. You can say, hey, your logic is flawed in chapter 3. But if I say, I didn't write this, the creator of the universe dictated it to me on a mountain, well,
the debate is over?
The debate is over. It places the text beyond human criticism. It's the ultimate mic drop.
Don't look at me, I'm just the messenger.
It gives the text existential weight. And that secures the third claim, moral objectivity. The idea that right and wrong aren't things we vote on. They aren't social constructs that evolve.
They're objective facts, like gravity.
Exactly. So in this worldview, thou shalt not steal is just as physically true as what goes up must come down.
Okay, so I get the why. The rigidity is a feature, not a bug, at least for the institution. It creates a fortress.
Yeah.
But here's where the source text pivots. It says that while this creates stability, it also creates a massive trap.
The literal trap.
Right, because when you lock things down that tight, you start making what the text calls a category error.
And this is the crux of the problem. The source calls it literal rigidity. It's what happens when you take a story that was meant to be a symbolic myth, a way to understand meaning, and you read it as if it were a physics textbook.
I feel like we do this all the time. But give me a concrete example. What does this look like in practice?
Well, think about going to a restaurant. You sit down, they hand you a menu. The menu has pictures of the food, descriptions of the flavor. It points you toward the meal. But if you then eat the menu.
And complain that it tastes like paper.
Exactly. You have confused the pointer, the menu, with the reality, the meal. You've committed a category error.
And the source says we do this with Scripture.
Constantly. The text lists a few specific examples. The biggest one is mistaking metaphor for geology.
This is the classic creationism debate, right?
It is. If you read a creation myth, which is usually this poetic, deep attempt to explain why humans matter and why we suffer, and you force it to explain how sedimentary rocks formed or, how old the planet is.
You're eating the menu.
You're eating the menu. And the tragedy is you break both things. You get bad science, obviously, but you also lose the poetry.
You lose the meaning.
Yes. And you create a very brittle faith. Because if your entire belief system rests on the literal fact that the Earth is 6,000 years old, then a single dinosaur fossil can destroy your God.
That is so fragile. Whereas if you understand it as a myth about the human condition, the fossil it's irrelevant.
Exactly. Geology can't disprove a poem. A poem isn't trying to be geology. But the moment the institution claims the poem is geology, because of that exclusive truth we talked about, they've entered the danger zone.
So we have this rigid structure that mistakes the map for the territory. But the source text doesn't just critique the end result. It actually traces how we got here. It calls it the genealogy of belief.
I love this part of the analysis. It's like archaeological digging, but for the mind.
It goes backwards, right? It says we didn't start with the rules.
No. Ideas don't exist until consciousness reflects on them. So the text asks us to imagine early humans. Step one is just raw experience.
Before language, there is experience.
Before theology, there is awe. Think about the sun. A primitive human feels the warmth on their face. They see the light chasing away the terrifying predators of the night. That isn't a god yet.
It's just a feeling.
It's just an experience of safety and heat. But the human mind can't just let an experience sit there. We have to label it.
We need to stabilize it.
Exactly. So we say sun, or we feel the protective force of the community and we say mother. We look at the storm and say power.
And this is where the chain reaction starts.
Right. When enough minds share that pattern, when we all agree on what sun represents, it becomes myth. Myth is just a shared map of experience.
Okay, so myth is the shared story.
But then we organize it, we build rituals, we say we must dance when the sun comes up. That becomes religion.
And the final step.
When we institutionalize the religion to protect it, when we build the walls and write the laws, it becomes authority.
So wait, the authority, the guy in the robe with the rule book, is actually trying to protect that original feeling of the sun on his face.
That's the tragedy of it. The authority is built to guard the awe. It wants to make sure that the experience of the sun is preserved for the next generation. But in building the walls so thick to protect it,
They bluff the light.
they often block the light completely. It's like that line, the institution is the lengthened shadow of a man. But in this case, the shadow has covered up the man. It feels like the structure ends up killing the thing it was supposed to save.
It creates a distance. You're no longer looking at the sun, you're looking at the rule book about the sun.
Precisely.
This leads to a question that might ruffle some feathers, but I have to ask it. If this is all just a progression of human psychology, from feeling to myth to authority, is the source saying God isn't real?
Yeah.
Is it saying it's all just in our heads?
The text anticipates that reaction, and it says, define real.
Yeah, that sounds like a dodge.
It's not, though. It offers two specific definitions where gods are undeniably real, regardless of what's strictly happening in the clouds. The first is psychologically real.
Meaning they exist as patterns in our brains.
As archetypes. Think about it. Even if Zeus isn't literally sitting on a mountain throwing lightning, the archetype of the authoritative father or the wielding of power is a real structure in your psyche. We all have it. It shapes how we view our bosses, our parents, our governments.
So if you are fighting with authority in your life, you are essentially wrestling with that God.
It is a permanent fixture of your mental landscape. It is real because it has real effects on your mind.
Okay, that's the internal reality. What about the external?
That's the second definition, socially real. This one is hard to argue with. The text argues that a god becomes real when belief in them moves matter.
Moves matter.
Look at the pyramids. Look at the Sistine Chapel. Look at the Crusades. Belief drives architecture, law, war, and love.
I see what you mean. If a belief is strong enough to cause a 1,000-year war or build a cathedral that weighs 1,000,000 tons, you can't say it doesn't exist.
Exactly. It has physically altered the planet. The cause might be a myth, but the effect is concrete.
The source also talks about embodiment here, which I found really touching. It says we make these things real by acting them out.
Yes, this connects the psychological to the social. The text says a mother goddess becomes real in the physical world the moment a human being embodies generative protection.
So when a mother or anyone really acts with that fierce, creating, protecting love,
Yeah.
they are making that goddess real in that moment.
Or a savior. That concept becomes real when someone actually sacrifices themselves for others. It moves the divine from the sky to the street.
It makes it tangible.
We are the vehicles.
That's empowering.
Yeah.
But it brings us back to the danger we talked about earlier. If we are just acting out the script or obsessing over the rule book, we might miss the point entirely. This brings us to the core philosophical argument of the source, the map versus the territory.
This is the destination. We have to understand that religion, scripture, theology, these are all maps. They are incredibly useful. They show you the safe paths, the cliffs, where the water is. We need maps.
But you can't live on a map?
No. And the source makes a metaphysical claim here that is found in almost all mystical traditions. It says that the divine, the ultimate source, is pre-conceptual.
Preconceptual, before ideas.
Before ideas, before words, before definitions. The moment you define it, you've reduced it.
Because a definition is a box. If I say God is X, I am also saying God is not Y. I've drawn a boundary.
And you cannot put the infinite in a box. The moment you draw a line around it, it's no longer infinite. So the text argues that the literal rigidity of the institutions, the exclusive truth, is actually a misunderstanding of their own subject matter.
They're trying to define the undefinable.
Yes. They are arguing about the font used on the menu instead of tasting the food. And that is why the mystic and the administrator are always at odds.
The administrator wants to protect the map.
And the mystic wants to walk the territory.
That distinction really solves a lot of the conflict, doesn't it? It feels like it takes the pressure up. You don't have to choose between science is right and religion is right. You just have to know which layer you're looking at.
It allows for a much richer engagement. You can appreciate the structure, the authority, without being crushed by it, because you remember it's just the container.
You can look at the cathedral and say, this is beautiful architecture that protects a myth, without needing to believe that the stones themselves are holy.
Exactly.
So let's recap where we've been. We started with the rigid claims of certainty, exclusive truth, authority, moral objectivity, and we realized they aren't just arbitrary rules, they're the bedrock for social stability.
But we also saw the trap. The literal trap, where we mistake the myth for physics, which leads to brittle faith and bad science.
We trace the genealogy back from authority to religion to myth to the stabilizing idea and finally back to the raw experience, the son, the mother.
And we looked at how those gods become real through our psychology and our social actions, through embodiment.
Finally, we landed on the distinction between the map and the territory. The reminder that the definition is always a reduction of the real thing.
It's a journey from the complexity of the institution back to the simplicity of the source.
So here is where we leave you, the listener. The text ends with a challenge, and I think it's a really useful tool for navigating the world. It asks you to identify your layer.
Right. When you are arguing about religion or thinking about meaning or even listening to the news, which layer are you fixated on?
Are you arguing about the historical forensics? Did this literally happen on a Tuesday?
Are you analyzing the psychological archetypes? What does this story tell me about the human mind?
Or are you looking for the metaphysical truth? What is the nature of being?
Because the answer changes depending on the layer. If you ask, is the resurrection real? In the historical layer, you are asking about biology and eyewitnesses. In the psychological layer, you are asking about the capacity for hope and a renewal in the human spirit.
And those are two totally different conversations.
They are, and most of the anger in the world comes from people screaming a historical answer at someone asking a psychological question.
That's a brilliant way to put it. So the challenge for you this week, when you look at your beliefs or the beliefs of the people around you, ask yourself, am I staring at the map or am I standing on the terrain?
Because the map is safe, it's clean, you can fold it up and put it in your pocket.
But the terrain is where the weather is. It's where the beauty is. And ultimately, it's where the life is.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.
Keep asking questions. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.